welcome to episode 5, I believe, of the Select Characters podcast. My name is Chris, I'll be your host, and I'm joined, as always, by my two good American friends, Enrique and Sam. Hi, guys.
How's it going?
What's up?
We've got a very nice podcast for you today. It's a sort of a special one because The Witcher 3 came out, so we're going to devote our entire What Have You Been Playing section to The Witcher 3 because I'm certain that that is all that we've been playing. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, Witcher 3. I'm guessing all of us have played just that game for the past week.
I actually haven't played it yet.
That sounds about right.
Nah, I'm just fucking with. No, dude, that game is like phenomenal. I'm so happy with it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm feeling a strong 9 out of 10, maybe a 10 out of 10.
I'm like between 8 and a 9.
Ooh. You want to go numbers? You want to go numbers on it?
Might as well.
No, I mean, honestly, like, it's definitely worth buying regardless. It's one of those games that's worth owning.
Yeah, it was definitely worth every penny I paid for it. I'm about 40 hours in now, and I've just reached Novigrad, which is the first big city, and it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. The thing that game does really well is it's got that whole slew of side quests, right? Like you've got in every RPG, but unlike every other RPG on the sun, every side quest is amazing. It's got its own self-contained story. It's interesting. It's just awesome. I've never seen anything like it.
They did a really good
I don't know
job.
about amazing.
All around. Amazing is maybe a tough word to ascribe to it. I feel like it's a really well done one of these.
It is, definitely. I'm just saying, like, some of the side quests you can tell are kind of phoned in, because, you know, having to inspect shields in a battlefield of corpses for God knows how long can, you know, that can get a little tedious.
I only had 1 or 2 of those in my 40 hours of playing it. Most of them have got their own self-contained story, and they are very interesting.
Yeah, no, but for the most part, I'm loving the game. I actually wrote a blog post about it, but this is one of the first games where I've gotten the message that, you know, you are over encumbered.
Right.
And it made me happy, which is a very strange thing, but the reason it did is because it kind of like, it was almost like a conscious decision of me taking my time and inspecting everything and picking up everything I could.
Right.
Whereas other games, I don't know, it feels like, even like Dragon Age, as fun as that game was, I felt very rushed playing it. And the inventory system was so annoying that I literally just found myself not bothering to pick up half the stuff that I would find. And I was just more concerned with getting from one point of the game to the other. With The Witcher 3, I'm actually taking my time, wandering around, stopping to pick up every lootable item that I can, picking up every flower, every little daisy, every monster gut that I can find. And, you know, when I got that message say you were over encumbered, I'm like, man, God, this game's amazing.
I like that it's got a little bit like that Resident Evil 4 style inventory system.
Yeah.
Where everything takes up a number of squares and you can kind of squeeze them around to fit more stuff in. I like that kind of inventory system, so that's definitely a plus for me.
It's a nice little detail that some specific items net you more money with specific merchants. So, for instance, weapons will get you more money if you sell them to a weaponsmith and so forth, which I thought was a nice little detail.
Oh, definitely. I actually spent, I think, a good, maybe I want to say like 40 minutes to an hour looting every body in that battlefield. Like, it's one of the first side quests you get. Mm-hmm. And you get a ton of, like, small axes, damage, like, long swords and things like that. And you can make bank if you sell them, like, to the blacksmith in town.
Yeah. Money's a hard thing to come by, though. Like, I was piss poor all the way up to level 14, I think.
Unless you're glitching, so... Not glitching, but I guess using the exploits in the game.
That's called playing
Right.
the game, man. I mean, do you think they didn't know that when they put that there? Like, you got to give them a little bit of credit.
I feel like developers, it's not that they don't know it, it's just that I don't think they think that players are going to use it in that manner. Because, you know, like, they have it so, you know, things respawn in case you kill them, or in case, you know, oh, hey, I need some leather, let me reform this for a second. I don't think that they stop to think, well, you know, what if players suddenly start, you know, abusing the system and farming this and, you know, going on a pure bovine genocidal urge just to rack up, you know, crowns. So it's interesting because, I mean, I saw like a bunch of people posting a video about how, you know, you can basically kill the cows, meditate for 2 hours, kill the cows again, and just kind of keep rinsing and repeating.
Really?
Yeah, and it doesn't stop you. You can basically just get the cow hides, and I think you sell them to the innkeeper, and you get, I think, about 54 crowns per, or like 27, yeah. You get 27 crowns per, and then they drop 2 hides, so that's 54.
I wish you hadn't told me that.
So See, and now you've reached a moral junction where you have to decide if this is the path you want to take.
Segueing into the moral stuff. This is a question for Sam. There's no morality meter in this game. There's no good points and evil points. So every moral choice that you make, you sort of have to make the choice that you would make if you were in that specific situation.
Yeah, I do like that, actually. It feels good. I decided when I was playing this one that I was, after we had that conversation about story, I was going to try and not think about that stuff and play it, you know, in a way that is more, you know, this is what I would do, instead of thinking about how it escalates or how it plays into a larger system.
Yeah.
And it's kind of worked, but he also doesn't, because it's Geralt of Rivia. It's not like a blank slate for me to inhabit as a player. So there's like a couple of levels there. It's like, what do I think Geralt of Rivia would do in this situation? Like, I don't project myself into him exactly, so to speak.
At least you're not thinking in terms of, well, if I choose this, I'll get more points in that specific thing. Or if I choose that, I'll get more points in that other thing.
Those moral choices still fall into some of the traps where, you know, you do the thing and they're like, here's some money, and you're like, oh, no, I don't want any money, and they're like, oh, cool, have this rad item instead. You're like, oh, cool, knew that was gonna happen. Like, I'm not actually a good person. I just knew that if I said no money, you were gonna give me something else. And then there's another one where the guy's trying to bribe you out. He's trying to pay you money so that you won't take him somewhere or turn him in or whatever, and it doesn't tell you how much. So, like, how would you make that decision? Because there's an amount of money that dude can pay me that I won't, but it's not mystery amount.
Just make the choice. Like, am I corruptible for a mysterious sum of money, or am I not? Or am I going to stick to my guns?
Yeah, because I think at that point it's more about, you know, how corruptible you are in terms of instant gratification. Because, you know, you're faced with the decision, okay, do I just take this mystery sum now and forget the quest and finish it and get the money, or do I want to trek back with this guy all the way back to the original quest giver so I can collect the bounty from him?
And so that I've been trying not to think about and analyze those factors. I've been trying to sort of keep myself contained within the story for my decision making. And since there's no meter, that's really helpful for that. And I guess I am enjoying it on that level. It's pretty cool. Sometimes he kind of says something that's not what I was going for, but I consider that part of the divide between that character and me.
I know from a writing standpoint, it's kind of difficult to have take that time with every single little piece of dialogue. So I have noticed that, like you said, some of the side quests are a little bit more in terms into like the black and white gradient versus like the gray, where, like you said, you know, it's okay, do I want to turn this guy in, or do I want to accept and, you know, get money for it, whatever. But one thing that I like from CD Projekt Red is, at least when it comes to the bigger decisions in the overall narrative that relate to the story, those tend to be very, I guess, ambiguous in terms of whether or not you're doing the quote-unquote right thing.
Right.
I know with Witcher 2, there was a lot of decisions where, you know, it was a big plot-changing point where you only had about 2 to 3 seconds to make your choice, and then that would automatically put you in a completely different branch of the story, which is really cool. So I'm looking forward to see those events in this game.
You can influence stuff even without knowing that you're influencing them. I'm going to try and tell this story without spoilers, so I'm going to remain a bit vague. But I rode into a small town, and I saw a couple of bandits just breaking into somebody's house. So I decided I was not going to have any of that, so I killed all of them. And for some reason, and what I didn't know is they were the henchmen of this other character that you need to do missions for at some point. So when I rode to his castle, they wouldn't let me in because I killed their friends.
Oh.
This was just awesome. An organic choice. So what I had to do to get into that castle is I had to take a whole different route. I had to go into the sewers and go through caves to get inside the castle. Whereas if I didn't kill those guys, I would have just rode in there no problem, which I thought was really impressive.
See, I like when they do that kind of decision making, because like you said, it takes away almost like that carrot in front of you where you're only doing it for an act of reward. Like, you know, the Mass Effect games, the Dragon Age games, like, oh man, I definitely want to be the evil character, so let me do this. Or, hey, I want that piece of gear. You know, something as innocuous as killing a bandit, the fact that it has those kind of repercussions like later in the game, it really makes you kind of get more invested into the story itself.
Yeah, it makes the world feel more alive.
It's pretty phenomenal.
which is something that I always look for in open world games or in most games.
Oh, and can we please talk about the real-time beard growth? Because that is amazing.
God, yes.
Is that a thing?
I love living in 2015.
Dude,
What?
yes, it's a thing.
Yes.
Like, your beard grows in real time, and it's freaking amazing. And I don't know why I'm, like, harping on this, but it's so cool.
How long can it get?
I don't know, a couple of inches long.
Wow.
But once you shave it, it grows back again. Like, it takes a couple of weeks, but in a couple of weeks' time, you'll have a full-grown beard.
Dude, like, the future is now. We have dynamic beard growth in
That's
games.
so cool. But at least back to the story thing just for a second, paying attention to that. When you get to the first town and everybody's like all hating on you because you're a witcher and, you know, spitting on the ground you want to walk on and all that stuff. Like, I was in that tavern, and what I wanted to do, like you were saying, like, do what you think the character would do, was like just to grab them and slam all their heads into the table. But I'm thinking about it like, well, I can't do that because it's going to cause a disturbance in this town and you don't want to do all that. But, like, I'm doing that there's, like, a story justification behind that. Like, I can't do what I want to do because it would make something bad happen inside the game world.
Right.
Right.
And that was cool. That was sort of like where story became part of the game for me. Because at first I was, like, kind of bummed about it. Like, okay, I want to do this thing. I'm going to try and play this game like Chris says. I'm going to do what I want to do. But I'm not bashing these dudes' heads in, so I'm not doing what I want to do. But then I realized that actually that ties into the game in like a larger sense, and it was actually even deeper than that. That was a cool moment for me. I'm trying to approach this in a more story-focused way. I think it's a good game to try and do that, like just to pay attention to the way that I play games.
When I was in that tavern, like, you held off on beating the shit out of them, right?
Yeah, I did.
I didn't, and it came back, and it came back to bite me in the ass 30 hours later.
Really?
Wow.
Yes,
Man.
this game is really impressive, and I'm going to. This is without a shred of hyperbole. This is one of the best games I have ever played. Just for the world building, for the way that you can influence the story. The voice acting's fantastic. The music's fantastic. It's a vast world, absolutely vast. I've never seen anything like it. The only thing I don't like is the way Geralt moves, because oh my god,
It's so floaty.
unbelievably so.
It's not great.
And the horse riding itself is no, I don't like that.
I do like that they did what they had in Red Dead Redemption, where you kind of have like that auto run where the horse will just follow the trail.
Yeah, that was very convenient. It's not perfect. It would just, it for some reason will run off the road.
It does take a lot of the stress off, but I agree. It's probably one of the biggest gripes I have with the game, and it seems that the controls are very floaty, and Geralt always needs to be at at a very specific location to interact with objects. Otherwise, you'll just like sprint past them.
Yeah, and movement is important because the game is really difficult. Unless you put it to the just story setting, the game will kick your ass. So movement's very important. When it takes a second for your character to turn around because for some reason Geralt can't walk backwards, at least not outside of a fight.
Yeah. He's got like an inertia to him that's realistic in a way that doesn't feel right in a game.
Yeah.
Which is a strange disconnect. Like,
it's not gamey enough.
yeah, like you made it more realistic, but by doing that, you made it worse.
Yes.
Like you move, and when you try to stop, you have a little inertia, or if you want to turn around, you have to do that, like that foot slidey thing, like you're running suicide sprints to go back the other way. So it's strange, but it's also real life grounded, and it's weird that making something more real would actually make it worse.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the concept of game feel, where the game, there are times where it just doesn't feel fun to move because of it.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, it's the real world physics. They're not fun. You know, you don't want your character to feel like he's sliding or the momentum's like pushing him in one direction too long.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like you said, it's not gamey enough, and it definitely affects the game feel, where the game, it makes the gameplay not seem as fun as it could be.
It makes me, I'm indifferent to the movement most of the time, unless I'm actually in a fight. Then it just becomes, a hindrance.
Actually, let me ask you something. We can all pretty much agree that The Witcher is a great game, correct?
Yes.
Sure.
Have you guys noticed any issues with like the graphical aspect of the game, or like the visual aspect?
Yeah. I've been playing on PS4. I should say that. And the performance is on the same level as Assassin's Creed Unity was at launch. There's frequent stuttering. It drops below 30 all the time. It sometimes can even drop to like, I want to say 20 in cutscenes. So the performance is not great. It's not bad enough to put a damper on the fun itself, but it's not perfect.
What about you, Sam?
It took me a little while to sink into. Something just felt strange to me, and what I think it was these kind of like micro stutters. And I was watching Fraps, and even though I was running 60 all the time, I was still getting these strange like tiny little hitches.
That's weird.
Yeah, but the newest patch, what was it, 1.3? That one shook it out for me. I think that they might maybe still be there, but they're way less noticeable.
Right.
And that could just come from the fact that I've played it more. I've just ran around a little more, and you kind of, that stuff that grates on you at the very beginning, you just kind of get used to as you keep playing.
Yeah.
More and more. But it looks amazing, and it's great, and I do think that helped a lot, and also some strange, maybe artifacting in some weird ways. I think it's too windy in general.
Oh, I've actually read that there are lore reasons for why it's so windy, because apparently in the books it is said that once humans spread out across the earth, the wind changed.
Whoa, cool.
I'm not entirely sure if that's true because I haven't read the books, but I've seen it. I've seen people say that on different websites, so it might be a grain of truth in that.
Interesting. Well, the reason I was asking is, remember when, I guess, the announcements first got made that the resolution of the game was like turned down to match the console setting?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were upset about that. I mean, do you think that the graphical issues have impacted your perception of the game, like how much you're enjoying it, or are they just kind of like in the backseat now?
This ties into what Sam said a couple of weeks ago. Every time a new generation of games comes out, you think, well, this is it, we've peaked. I've had that feeling for about 3 or 4 years now. And every time a new game comes out, I'm absolutely happy with how it looks, even if it's not the prettiest game out there. I don't care. I really don't. I don't mind that the game has been downgraded significantly because it still looks awesome. And graphics aren't the most important thing for me, so.
I'm with you. Graphics are sort of trailing the bottom of the list for as far as what's important in a game for me.
I mean, it looks good. I mean, looking at a sunrise or a sunset in a game is really pretty, and it makes riding across the country very enjoyable. But I think it's good enough. I love it. I love the way it looks.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely agree with that. It's good enough. And because I was noticing, like I did notice the graphical issues for about 20 minutes, and after that, I just became engrossed in the story. I enjoyed the gameplay, and I don't know, like I could care less about those issues.
Yeah, like I said, the technical issues don't really bother me.
I think that overall, I don't even really have complaints. It's just that in some places, it seems like it could be better. Like nothing about it is even wrong or bad, which is a hallmark of a great game. But it's in some of the aspects of that game, you can see so much potential.
Right.
Specifically with all the sort of procedural stuff, like when you're monster hunting and stuff like that and finding all the clues.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's really great, but it's also not flushed out enough. You can see what would be really cool, like a CSI Temeria kind of thing, you know, where you find the clues and eventually catch the monster. And maybe they expand on that a little bit more, but it seems more like watching Geralt tell you what those clues mean. But I guess he's the one with the knowledge.
He is doing that.
Yeah, so that makes sense. But it'd be cool if you had to figure it out yourself.
Well, I thought that him talking about the clues that he finds, I thought that was a very elegant solution, actually. It makes sort of sense for him as a character because he's always on the road alone. He doesn't really talk to other people. So it might make sense for him to talk to himself when he finds something interesting. It also helps you understand what the hell's going on. So I thought that was an elegant solution.
Imagine if you had a book, like imagine if you actually had the book that he has, like that Ghouls and Owl Ghouls book, and you just found a bunch of clues, and then you had to read this book and try and figure out what monster it was that was attacking or whatever.
That will make the game really tedious, I think.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's not gamey, but it would be fun.
They actually had that in Witcher 2, where when you were like hunting monsters, like the Kieran, for example, not the Kieran. What was it? I can't remember the name, but it was one of the first monsters. But those big monsters, you could actually buy a compendium about them, and it would actually have information that would make the fights against them significantly easier.
Oh, you still have that in this game? Because sometimes you'll pick up books and something gets added to the bestiary. So that still happens, but it's not really a required portion of the game, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think that's good because, you know, it doesn't impede somebody that's maybe not as analytical as you might be from enjoying the game.
Yeah.
It just gives you that little bit of an advantage on it.
I'm not saying that I don't like to read. All I'm saying is when I can kill stuff, I don't want to read about killing
No,
stuff.
I'm with you. I also don't think that would be fun now that I think about it, but something like that, where there was a little bit of where you in your head as the player were walking through the next steps to try to get ahead of Geralt and think about what was about to happen or what he was about to fight. Because
Right.
now you sort of, well, maybe people who understand the game and the lore a lot better do, but I don't. I get all these clues, but I don't know what they're leading up to, right? Unless
Yeah.
he tells me, I have no idea. So there's no way for me to try to be 4 steps ahead of him. Like, I can't guess who the killer is
Yeah.
because I don't know what kind of creatures are out there. But if I did, it would be really interesting because then I would see if I was right or wrong at the same time as Geralt sees if he's right or wrong.
Yeah. Well,
I see what you mean.
I could see the added benefit, but I like it the way it is, to be honest.
You know, I'm actually always interested at like how it always diverts, like that curve that occurs where you find a mechanic that you want more out of, and how, looking at the game as a whole, your opinion of that can either be positive, thinking, man, I really wish they'd done this, and it just makes you appreciate it more, or it can kind of just go the completely opposite way, and you have a negative reaction to it, saying, oh man, like, you know, like they messed us up, this could have been so much better, blah, blah, blah. And it's just really interesting how, like, I guess the overall packaging of the game can really influence like those small decisions.
Right. I'm having a hard time really finding something that I really, really don't like. Like I said, the movement is a bit annoying at times, and you know, some graphical issues, but nothing too serious. Like I said before, I think that this is one of the best one of the best games I have ever played.
Oh, I definitely agree.
I feel like the combat might be a little bit lacking. I'm going to come out there with it. I'm just going to say it. It feels... The actual sword swinging part of it feels really strange. The whole beforehand stuff where you have to like carefully do your potions and, you know, use the right oils and all that stuff, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then the actual combat is just really loose and juicy and swingy, greasy. It's like like somebody wants you to defuse a bomb, so you spend all this time doing all this research and like carefully understanding how wires work. And then when you open the case, like to defuse the bomb, you just have to pull all the spaghetti out as fast as you can. Like there's no weight or impact or whatever to the combat. It just slides. Like compared to something like maybe Dark Souls where, you know, your attacks have weight and animation priority is a huge deal. It doesn't jive well with that pre-research part to have combat that is so Kingdom Heartsy.
You know, one thing that I miss is the original Witcher actually had different stances depending what you're fighting, where you had one stance that was meant to do big group of enemies. The downside to that was you weren't able to single target, and then they had another stance that was used for one-on-one fights, but the downside to that was all your attacks would be directed, you know, in a linear fashion, so if you were overwhelmed in numbers, you could actually be at a disadvantage. So I kind of missed that kind of like variance in combat.
I think if they added a millisecond of delay to every impact with the sword, that might fix everything. Just make it stick just a little bit when you hit somebody, and it does a little bit, but I just don't think it's enough. It's like maybe Devil May Cry-ish in a way. It's very
Okay.
It's very swingy, just like greasy, sloppy, swing around kind of stuff. Like it's not deliberate in the way that you would think it would be because of all the research you have to do to get ready for the fight.
Right.
I feel like that was almost an intentional design choice, because I know the previous games, they've been lambasted because of the combat system, where people don't like it because it's either too clunky or too complex or for whatever reason. So I feel like they kind of, not necessarily dumbed it down, but they definitely made combat as simple as possible, because like you said, you're just swinging your sword wildly and hope things die.
They had stripped it down to its core.
I mean, there's definitely more to it than that. Like there's combos and stuff, right? Like it's all there. I just mean the actual, when you swing a sword at something, the moment it hits it, but you just like swap, 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 you know, instead of it like boom, okay, now we're swinging a sword, bam. It's in contrast to not only the research, but it's in contrast to the way that he moves and walks, and that inertia that creates that sense of realism and stuff. Right. So it's all there in the player movement, like when you're walking around town, but it's not in the combat.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe they'll fix it when they release the definitive edition.
That's not even a huge complaint. You know, like I said, none of my complaints are actual complaints, because it's pretty fun the way it is. But it's just like you can see how maybe it could be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right.
but everything else in that game is more than enough support to hold up even if the combat was terrible, I think.
Yeah, I don't want it to end. I just don't want it to end. I absolutely love it.
If anything, this just makes me look forward to Cyberpunk.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that game's going to be incredible.
Yeah, if they're going to use the same engine, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait for us to finish recording this podcast so I can jump back in.
Awesome.
All right.
But yeah, what, 6 thumbs up? Is that our final?
Yes.
You know what? I'm gonna give it 4 more, like 2 more. I'm gonna use my toe thumbs as
All
well.
right.
This is a Mobius strip out of pie.
Sounds good.
It's a good game. Play it.
All right, I guess the first topic I want to discuss is a little bit of a segue from our Witcher discussion. But we were talking about how there was a graphical downgrade, and it's pretty noticeable when you're playing the game. And CD Projekt Red actually made a recent statement in regards to that, where they basically announced that it was an intentional decision on their behalf because they wanted to focus on the console market and make the experience even throughout. And I can understand why a lot of players are upset about that. But it does bring up the question that, there was a lot of hype built up with The Witcher 3, especially when they first showed, the initial screenshots of it and the gameplay features. If CD Projekt knew that they were going to be downgrading those graphics, do you think that they had not necessarily moral, but just a responsibility to their consumers to inform them and, put the brakes on the hype train, as it were? You see that happening a lot with different companies. I know Bethesda actually was guilty of that when there was that Fallout 4 hoax, if you think, a year or two ago? Mm-hmm. Where that mysterious website creeped up and, it kept providing all these different, encoded messages, and people kept hyping it up, saying it was a signal of Fallout 4 being released, and Bethesda just sat back and refused to comment. And only when the hype, reached its apex and the site got revealed to be a hoax did Bethesda come out and say, oh, hey, we don't associate ourselves with that hoax. So it kind of makes you think, do you think that the developers have a responsibility to the consumer to let them know about these things?
Yeah, I guess so. It would only be fair to the consumer. But on the other hand, don't buy trailers, buy games.
That's true. I mean, I don't know. I look at it from a marketing standpoint. It's free PR for them. It's viral marketing.
Yeah.
They almost don't have to say anything because it's doing their work for them.
What I think happened with The Witcher was CD Projekt Red started working on The Witcher when nobody really knew what the specs for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One were to be. So they released a trailer with something that they had been working on, which they thought would run well on the next gen of consoles. And then the next generation comes out. Turns out they're not all that powerful. And now they're left to pick up the pieces, and they have to downgrade in order for it to actually run on the new consoles.
And they can't show it with a caveat that says, hey, it might not actually look like this, because then everything we ever see would have to have a little footnote on it that says, hey, it might not actually look like this. Which that point is strange, because we're sort of expected to know when we see preview trailers that that's not what the game is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And that is strange. Why did we all agree that that's okay? Like, we should just know better.
Yeah, I think people hype themselves up way too much.
They do, but I guess, and this is from a game journo / industry point of view, but I don't want to say that companies don't have responsibility to the consumers in that sense, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of it has to do with, avoiding even more fallout from it, because you know how the internet likes to pick up its, pitchfork and torches at the sign of anything.
Sure.
Right.
Can you imagine the backlash that they would have received if months ago they would have come out and said, hey, we're going to downgrade the features on PC so it matches console?
Right.
That would have probably been like a proverbial shitstorm for months about that. So I think that it was probably a conscious, PR decision for them to say, hey, let's keep our mouths shut after the game releases. If somebody, if it becomes an issue, then we'll comment on it. And even then, when you look at their actual statement, which I have right here and I can read it out, it says, if the consoles are not involved, there is no Witcher 3 as it is. We can lay it out like that simply. We just cannot afford it because consoles allow us to go higher in terms of the possible or achievable sales, have a higher budget for the game, and invest all of it into developing this huge, gigantic world. So in a way, they're straight out saying, hey, don't be pissed that it doesn't look as good on PC because unfortunately consoles is what's paying the bills right now.
Yeah, people seem to be angry because they've always seen CD Projekt Red as this company that is very PC centric, and they used to be, but in the end, they are still a company. They want to make as much of a return on their investment as humanly possible, and they are not your friends. So they'll choose the thing that will get them the most money.
It's probably true.
It is, but CD Projekt Red also, I mean, they've shown time and time again, they're very consumer oriented. I mean, look at the note they left you when you open up the, like your case of The Witcher 3 and all the free DLC they're giving you to begin with. I think they're doing what they can to alleviate that kind of, tension between the consumers and them. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, hey, there's very realistic metrics that we need to go by. One of them is budget. And unfortunately, console is what's giving us, the money for this. So yes, we're going to give, pull a little bit more in their direction. No offense to the PC players.
You can't run a country on goodwill. Like this is how you should view previews and trailers, right? You should view those trailers as the pictures of the burgers you see at McDonald's. They look amazing, but the burger you'll get in the end won't look anything like that picture.
That's a good analogy.
Oh, thank you.
I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot.
So never buy into trailers. Never pre-order something. Just buy it when it comes out. Because you can never be sure with these companies. Like I said, they're not your friends.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it's not some malicious, thing that they're doing to.
No. I'm not arguing that. Sorry.
It's okay.
The question, I mean, people are upset because they feel like the consoles held back the development of the PC, and that without the consoles, the PC would look absolutely amazing.
I don't know. From the sound of it, without the consoles, you wouldn't have a PC version, period.
That's what I'm saying. What if it looked like that, but it was 25% of the game it is now? Like, It was a game that looked like that, but it was a 15-hour game because they couldn't fund the rest of it. Whatever, dude. It's not a big deal. I think that people sort of feel like they were bait and switched. Maybe that's what they're upset about. Like they didn't get the thing that they saw. Because if you look at the images that are floating around that compare the two, they are radically different.
Yes,
they are.
And they didn't get out ahead of the fact that all that stuff was going to happen. But none of that stuff is a mortal sin to me.
No, it isn't. They made a smart business decision, and PC players weren't really happy with that, which I can totally understand. But still, it's not as if the game is less good now because the graphics aren't as shiny as they were when they revealed it during E3 like 2 years ago.
Oh, exactly. And like you said, I can understand and relate to a degree the ire that they feel because, the Witcher series in general has always been a game that kind of showcases how good the environments can look, how cutting edge the graphics can be, and I can understand that, when you get the final product that falls short of that expectation that they set up for themselves. But at the same time, at the end of the day, you have to kind of take a step back from your own fanboyism and look at the real world reasons behind it.
Yeah, curb your enthusiasm, as it were.
And what I like the most is something that's unique to this medium is that if the game is good enough, all that stuff falls away.
Exactly. And that's that's why I asked the question earlier where, you obviously notice there's a little bit of screen stuttering, there's slight screen tearing throughout the game, but at the end of the day, because the whole product completely is good, none of that matters.
So if you did if you were checking stats on comment threads, like before release and after release, like before release, everybody's all pissed about this graphical downgrade, and then like 1 day later, in that whole thread, you'll have one guy who's like, "But they fucked up with the graphics thing, right?" Like,
yeah.
With video games, it doesn't matter. All you have to do is make a good game. That's the core of everything about this hobby. Is you can get rid of almost everything by just making a freaking good game, and I love that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Gamers and the internet at large, they're not rational. They'll get really angry about something and sharpen pitchforks and go for it.
And it's funny how much emphasis they put on something like graphics.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. It's like, if graphics aren't state of the art, then in the eyes of a lot of people, at least on forums, is that it's a shit game. But,
and it goes, and it ties even like the whole 30, frames versus 60 frames debate that Ubisoft and other companies keep trying to bring up for some reason that 30 frames is more cinematic, we can't do 60 frames, and there's a lot of argument between like the consumers, customers, and the companies, and they're going head to head against this, demanding, hey, we want this at 60 frames, why are you screen locking this, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it can make the game look better, but it's not a make or break experience for the most part.
Depends on the game. I mean, if it's an online multiplayer thing like a shooter or a racer, 60 frames is just objectively better because you need those extra frames for you to react quicker to stuff. But 30 frames is perfectly playable in most cases. Like hell, even 25 FPS is playable.
Okay. See, that's dirty peasant talk right now.
I thought so. I mean, I thought I agreed with you, and then I turned The Witcher to 30 just to see what everybody was talking about with the difference between 30 and 60, and it is there.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely noticeable, but I'm saying that it's still perfectly playable at 30. And especially when you're a console player and you mainly play games on 30 FPS, it won't matter to you.
See, my thing is, like, if I had the option between 30 and 60, I'll always go for 60 because
Yes.
personally, I think it just looks better, and I definitely feel that feels more cinematic. But if I'm forced to play at 30 frames, it's not gonna ruin the experience for me.
Yeah, to get back to the topic at hand, is people buy into the hype way too early, and people just pull out their wallets the instant something looks cool, and they buy something, and then it turns out that it's not as great as they thought it would be, and then they get angry.
I mean, you think it's their own fault then for just building it up?
Well, yeah. Nobody but you is really hyping yourself up. Nobody is forcing you to buy a product that is not out yet, that hasn't been reviewed yet. You do that. You're buying into an idea and an expectation that you set for yourself. So, yeah, you can lose a bit of money in the end, and you've got nobody to blame but yourself.
And it's fascinating because it almost creates like this atmosphere of just native advertising where the community itself is what's pitching your game. Like they're doing all your marketing work for you because they're building this hype up. There's entire subreddits dedicated to games. There's, news journal sites are covering every single, development aspect of a game's journey.
Yeah.
And, they're doing all the work for them. They're pretty much, they're being free PR for them. And at the end of the day, it's almost like these, the companies don't necessarily have a responsibility to stop the community from doing what it's going to do.
And the community is going to do what they're going to do anyway. And you shouldn't lie to your consumers. You definitely shouldn't do that. But in the end, the public at large is mostly responsible for hyping something up.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't see it as lying because, I mean, it's fun to hype. It's fun to speculate. I join, when there's a big game coming out that I'm looking forward to, one of the first things I do is check if there's a subreddit for it because I like discussing these things about the game.
Yeah.
And they have to. Like, they want to hype it up as much as possible to sell as many copies as possible, but overhype is a thing.
Yes.
That can happen. And then if you overhype the game, then there's no way it can live up to expectations, and then everybody who plays it's disappointed.
Yeah.
Even though it could be great on its own as it is. So that's a fine line that they kind of have to walk. And when the community can sort of catch itself in this feedback loop, they can overhype a game without you even getting involved in it. And that's a bummer.
Now look at what happened with Destiny. That's a great example of a community overhyping itself.
See, but Destiny is a funny story because, I mean, I still play Destiny because I have, 4 or 5 friends that are still actively on it. So for me, it's a really fun social game to play with them. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting because I look at the development cycle of Destiny and, the original trailer they released versus all the statement about how the game was going to work versus the final product. And it makes you wonder, was there a certain milestone that Bungie reached when they realized, dude, we're not going to be able to deliver on any of this? Mm-hmm. Or was it just a matter of them rationalizing it, saying, hey, this isn't exactly what we had in mind, but it still works. And in their eyes, they don't really see a reason to address the community saying, oh, by the way, we changed this completely because it's still the same in spirit. So I don't know, it's really interesting. And I don't know, it makes you wonder about that.
I personally try to avoid hype at all costs. I find out that a game's coming out and I say that looks like something I might want to play, and then I try to not engage with anything else that comes out about that game.
Really?
No preview trailers, none of that stuff. Because it does have an effect on what you get when you play the final game. It has an effect on your perception of it.
Yeah.
And coming into something and being super excited, there's really only one way you can go from there, and that's down. But if you come into it ready to see what this is all about, then you're kind of insulated from the hype train in a way.
Yeah.
So are you basically saying set your expectations so low that when they're not met, it won't matter?
Not even that, just be ready to be surprised. Not like you're saying I expect this to be low, prove me wrong, video game, but just like because it's the same way if you are overhyped, you know, like I expect this to be awesome, prove me right, video game. I try to come at it as neutral as possible and just let it be what it wants to be, and then I make my own opinion about that.
Yeah, that's a great outlook.
In that space without bringing over all the baggage of all the hype and excitement and stuff like that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with hype per se, because like I said, I'm one that I like the hype. I like to discuss the games. I like to speculate because it's a fun hobby for me. But I think the issue lies where I guess there's instances of being hyped for specific aspects of the game. Like The Witcher, I was hyped for it because of the story, because I've played Witcher 1 and 2. I love the world building that CD Projekt Red has done. So for me, I was hyped to be able to visit this world again, and the fact that they were going to have it be more open-ended this time, like more open world exploring. So that was my version of the hype train. So of course my expectations were met because, hey, I'm back in this world. But I feel the issue happens where you have this, I guess, untangible hype where you're excited for these very vague notions of the game, but you can't really pinpoint what it is. So when you get your hands on the game, it's almost like you have that hype has nothing to attach itself to.
Yeah.
Right, you set unrealistic standards from square one, in a way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's not necessarily unrealistic standards, but I guess you don't specify your standards. So, you have in this mind this game's going to be the end-all, be-all, but you don't know why. You haven't had that cognitive process where you sit down and say, hey, this is going to be a great game because of the story, or hey, this game's going to be great because of this aspect, or hey, because of this.
Oh, I see.
You just have this weird, like this vague fog in your head about, oh, this game's going to be great, and I don't know why. And when you sit down, it's almost like you can't come to terms with, I guess, the reality of what you had versus what your expectations were, because you never really set those expectations to begin with.
Like if you see a game that looks cool, you sort of start to follow it around because you're interested in it. But I don't know, just don't get hyped until it's actually out, or the reviews are actually out, which is usually like a week before the game comes out, and get hyped off that.
I mean, I don't know, because even the reviews can be tainted. Not tainted, but I know ideally reviewers are supposed to be, more objective towards a game, but that's not going to happen. Fact of the matter is we all have our biases, and it comes through when we're reviewing our games. I think it's just, there needs to be more personal accountability for consumers. It's fine if you want to get hyped, but do your research, know what you're getting hyped for, and know why.
Yeah, it's not their fault if the game does not live up to the expectations that you set for yourself based on little info.
Yeah, it's not their fault if I'm disappointed because The Witcher 3 has no space battles because, hey, the sky looks really pretty, so I should obviously be able to go there because they said it's open-ended.
Damn it, don't remind me!
I don't know, man. Other than that, I don't know. What do you, to get excited about something and then have it come out and finally play it? Something about that process. I mean, we do get excited because video games are fun, right? But at the same time, you're opening the door to risk by getting excited about something.
Yeah, well, I just like to curb my enthusiasm. I only really get hyped about something when it's a new installment in a series that I love. So, for instance, I know that this might be a bit controversial because people think that they're milking that franchise, but I'm looking forward to Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I am. Because I loved all the other parts in the series.
But see, like I said, in a way that kind of ties back to the consumer responsibility, because you know that you enjoy the series. There's certain aspects you enjoy of it, and you're looking forward to getting more of those same things.
Yeah, and let's be honest here. With Assassin's Creed, rest assured, all those things are still going to be there because it will be a cold day in hell before they actually innovate the gameplay itself. But I love the core of the gameplay, so I'll probably love that one as well. And if I don't love it, then there's nobody to blame but me.
So the next topic we're going to bring to the table is the consequences of cheating, and a little bit of a dabble in exactly what cheating is in general. The sort of kickoff point for this was the developers of H1Z1 have taken a very firm stance against cheaters, where if you cheat, you're banned, that's it. No second chances. and they were known to say, once a cheater, always a cheater, which is something I definitely agree with.
Oh, yes.
However, they have, as maybe sort of a promotional thing, started having cheaters be able to post an apology video and say how sorry they are for cheating, and then have their accounts unbanned, which is a small amount of slack in the noose that seems counter to their previous kind of stance on the issue.
What they should do, I think, is they should let those people make the videos and then not unban them.
Well, I mean, what does that do? I don't know. I'm not a fan of public shaming just because I don't think it really does anything.
No, of course not. And even if it wasn't a horrible practice, it still undermines their initial stance.
That's true. I mean, they should have just banned them and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
How many players do you think Blizzard led back from like the couple 100,000 that they banned for using bots? None of them.
Yeah, but those were all temporary bans, right?
No, permanent.
Oh, they were permabans.
Yeah.
Good. It's been a long time coming.
And I mean, like I said, they didn't sit down and discuss with anybody. They just said, "Hey, you guys are cheating. You're done," and that's it.
I don't mind cheating as long as it is in single player. But the moment you do it in multiplayer, that is detrimental to the experience of other people, and it can get other people banned as well. Like, for instance, with the whole GTA 5 hack thing, right? Hackers, they were shooting like bags of money at other people on the servers, and those people got banned as well, even though they didn't hack or didn't cheat. So it is detrimental to the experience of other players. It's a shit move. Just don't play online if you want to cheat so badly. If you want to do it in single player, that's absolutely fine, because that enhances your experience. Doing it online detracts from the experience of others.
I mean, it brings up the question, like, why do people cheat? Because it's just fun for them. It's a way for them to enjoy their game. So who are you to say, hey, don't enjoy the game the way you want to?
It builds on the power fantasy.
I mean, I know...
And it makes you all powerful.
I do agree with you that there should be a line drawn, because as soon as your enjoyment of your experience starts interfering with somebody else's, that's when we kind of start having issues of contention. But I don't know, to a degree, like, cheating is okay in single player games if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But it's almost like a gray area when you get into the online aspect of it with the community, and maybe you're doing some kind of cheating that's not necessarily affecting other players. Is that a bannable offense? So, how should you treat that?
Well, it usually gives you an edge, right, in multiplayer. Like stuff like wall hacks, for instance.
Right.
Gives you an edge over other players in a match. So no, just don't cheat when you're online, because it will either give you an edge or it will ruin the days of other players.
The problem is that as soon as you cheat in an online game, everybody else gets transformed from human beings into content. You're not playing a game with people anymore. Like, the only reason to cheat in a multiplayer game, you still need other people to play against to receive the effects of the cheats that you're doing.
They just become your playthings, basically.
Right. And I don't know if it works. I haven't really done it before. I guess I should have as an experiment, right? But at least in single player games, when you cheat in a single player game, it seems, for me personally at least, it drains that game just immediately. Like, you have a lot of fun for like 30 or 40 minutes, and then you're just kind of done with the game.
Not necessarily. I used to cheat all the time when I played GTA San Andreas. And that was a way to extend the game's lifetime after I was done playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could just fuck about with the physics, or you fuck about with the mechanics. You can just do stuff that you wouldn't be able to do under normal circumstances, which would make the game more fun after you played through the story and acquired all the items and stuff like that.
Do you think that people who cheat in multiplayer games eventually get bored, or do you think that they use those cheats for the entire lifespan of the time they play that game and they're always having the same amount of fun with it?
Well, people are still playing the multiplayer for Modern Warfare, and that game is, 8 years old now? And it's ripe with hackers. So you'd think that those people are still having fun doing it, even after all those years.
It kind of makes me wonder how much of the cheating is just, I guess almost the beast you create, where, people just get frustrated from playing games where, it's an uphill battle because everyone else is cheating, and how many of those actually just reach that breaking point and then they start doing it as well because, they get tired of being on the receiving end.
You die a hero, or you see yourself live long enough to become the villain.
Yeah, or in this case, just an asshole.
Yeah.
But yeah, it brings up. But I guess bringing this back to the original, topic that spurred this discussion is the H1Z1 developers. Like you said, they did ban, they were banning people, but it was a limited time thing. But they did have a a way they could get unbanned, and it was just making a public apology video. And the caveat was that you had to host it publicly. And if you hosted it publicly and they unbanned you and you put that video to private, they would ban you again. And I have a couple issues with it because on the one hand, like you said, I think it completely undermines the whole point of, banning them to begin with, because why are you going to punish a cheater if you're going to suddenly just slap them on the wrist afterward and say, okay, well, if you say you're sorry, you can come back. And second of all is like, I don't agree with having that public shaming as a consequence and holding it over their head to the point where, you have to keep this up. It has to be public. You have to basically shame yourself in order for us to let you enjoy the game again.
I think it's a unique thing to do because I haven't heard of other developers doing something similar.
No, I think this is the first time, well, at least personally, that I've seen any kind of media attention towards it.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with the method. I would prefer that it would just permaban those people and never give them a chance to come back again. But,
Right.
Shaming them publicly might just turn out that they'll never cheat again.
Nope.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of people cheat just because they get a rise out of pissing people off, and making a public apology video for them. Maybe that's just par for the course. It's just, hey, let me make a troll video saying I'm sorry and get back in and do it again.
Who knows?
And then what? The H1Z1 guys are gonna say, "No, say it like you mean it."
Yeah, exactly. Because they've already proved, like, well, all right, well, this time you need to be genuine with your apology.
So, do you think this had a root in some sort of concern about actually changing the cheating landscape, or do you think that it was a PR move?
It's a PR move. Has to be.
I don't know. It's a good question because the way John Smedley, which is I think he was like one of the head developers for, like the lead developer for H1Z1, the way he put it is that the reason they even did this whole public shaming thing is because they wanted, I guess, a visual confirmation that yes, there are consequences for cheating, and we need to, they were hoping that by having these people apologize, it would somehow serve as a deterrent.
Because if you ban somebody, leave them banned, they're invisible now. And nobody knows that they were gone or banned. They just don't see them anymore.
What some games do is put people who cheat repeatedly, they put them all in the same server so they don't bother people who want to play the game without cheat.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's cutting them too much slack.
Well, I guess another thing that bothered me was the generalized statement they made about once a cheater, always a cheater in regards to games. Because, I don't know, I don't necessarily think that's true because I think it kind of trivializes the motivations behind players to cheat in certain games.
I think a zero tolerance thing is what's needed here because I do believe that cheating online is detrimental to the experience and the enjoyment of other people. So no, it's a choice. You know the consequences. You know you might get banned. You know this. You still do it.
Here's the thing, though. Like, I'm looking from the point of view of, I guess, because I'm referring more to experiences that I've had where, it's more programs that just kind of have a general set of guidelines where they ban you for any modification on the game files, which, yes, that's great when it's people hacking to mess up the online experience for other people, but, playing a game like Dark Souls where you can unlock the frame rate, that was seen as cheating because you're modifying the game file. Adjusting the field of view for, like Grand Theft Auto 5, again, if you go online with that, hey, you're a cheater, you're banned from the game.
Yeah.
And it's not just an isolated incident where it's related to just an Autobot. Even the developers from, Rockstar for GTA 5 have gone on record saying, hey, if you want to modify the field of view in single player, that's fine, but if you go online, we're going to ban you. And I don't think that's really fair because you're basically lumping, the cheating asshole who likes to get a rise of people on online matches and ruin the experience for them with somebody that just wants their game to genuinely look better. I don't think it's a matter of necessarily of just, hey, cheaters are going to be cheaters.
Isn't the anti-cheat system in GTA 5 like fully algorithmic? It will just look at your files and checks if you've modified some. And
yes.
Yeah, it would be better if a human did it, but that is just unfeasible.
But even in that scenario, like I said, the humans themselves have said, hey, it doesn't matter, we're still going to ban you for this.
Well, the majority of people won't mod their game, and an even smaller amount of people will cheat. So most people will never run into this problem with GTA 5. Most people just won't. So I think that's a fair trade-off. It's not perfect, and it's certainly not fair, but it is the most efficient way to go about this.
I think you got to be really careful about cracking that door. I mean, how do you even say, okay, FOV changes are allowed, but none of this other stuff is? At that point, it becomes
Right.
just a radically larger amount of work.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they call them cheaters instead of calling them file editors or something like that.
Right.
Because cheaters has, like bad connotations associated with it. Like, you don't want to be a cheater because that sucks. So people who make these small changes, they're not cheating, but they are cheating in the way that they've changed the basic game files. They're coming to a place where everybody's supposed to have the exact same set of papers with one that's a little bit different. Even though it doesn't give them an advantage, they are still different from everybody else.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I take like issue with it, where I don't necessarily think that it's fair to lump those people with the general cheating quote unquote populace. And like statements, broad generalizing statements of once a cheater, always a cheater. Like again, like I don't think it's too broad, and it generalizes. Like I said, people that they're just doing these, of editing a file because hey, it'll run better if I do this, or hey, I want it to look better on my system.
There's a book called Playing to Win by David Serlin, and he talks about competitive video gaming just overall in general. And the way he defies cheating is using something outside of the game or changing, what's supposed to be the same for everybody with some external factor that causes you to gain an advantage.
Right.
So, therefore, if you were to change something, but it did not lead to you gaining a competitive advantage, what we need is another term for that that's not pejorative, like cheating, that doesn't come with all the baggage that's associated with cheating.
Modder.
Modder, sure. Like, modders are different from cheaters. Mm-hmm. We can agree with that from our side, but from the point of view of the person who hosts a multiplayer server and made this game, how do you draw the line? Like, you can't check all their files and then make sure, okay, this guy only has FOV changes, he's probably good to go. Because I don't think it's that granular. I don't think they have that amount of scanning, sorting, and filtering, or to be able to get it, they would have to scan your computer at a level that nobody's okay with. And so it's a bummer for the modders to have to be lumped in with the cheaters, when what they actually are is they're all just somebody who changed something, but somebody did it not to gain a competitive advantage, and somebody did it specifically in order to do that. So I don't know where you go from there, but I think in general, you just have to say too bad. Like, I know you like a better FOV, but, this is going to make the overall online experience better for everybody if we look for any change at all. Sorry about your luck.
Just for the sake of simplicity, it's better for them to just have that generalizing broad statement.
Needs of the many.
And I mean, it's cool for me to go to an online multiplayer game and know that everybody I'm playing with is having the exact same experience that I am. That's what you want. Like, that's the ideal online environment. And the fact that some things can and can't be tweaked, because I guess they could put a slider, right? Just put an FOV slider as an actual part of the game so that you don't have to do something external. But
see, at that point, if you have a slider, then all of a sudden your experience isn't the same as everybody else's because you can all have different settings on it.
But you all have access to the same slider, therefore making it the same.
Can't argue with that.
Fair enough.
And but it's more than just specifically FOV. Yeah, that's just a good example to kind of lean on. But I think in general, you want the differences in people's gameplay experiences to be based on their skill at the game, and you want to have a fair competitive environment. And if in order to do that, some people get caught in the filter, I mean, that sucks, but you would hope that they could understand, at least, like, why it's happening. They don't have to like it.
As long as they're aware of, the consequences and what leads to the decision.
And if people want to cheat and they get banned, then that's fine. Like, get them all out. I have an absolutely no tolerance policy for cheaters. Like, just squeeze them all and grind them into the dust. I do not care what happens to them.
Yeah, I'm with Sam on this.
Oh, no, I agree with that. And like I said, I think, having exceptions where you'll let them back in, if they make a public apology. While I can understand the rationale that they want to raise awareness to the concept of cheating, I think it definitely undermines their point where, you should just not flip-flop. You should have either you're going to ban them and have that be the end of the discussion, or you're going to make them go through this weird, apology 12-step program to get them back into the game.
That shit is messed up. To make anybody beg and plead to come back to your video game or anything else, like to treat them like a dog instead of a human being, that sucks, man. And it feels like PR stunt, dude. I mean, instead of making people aware that cheaters are human beings, and when we ban them, they feel bad about it. So don't let this happen to you. Like, what kind of PSA is that?
Yeah, it sounds like they use a sweeping declaration just to drive home a point. Not much more than that. It seems like a PR stunt, and I do believe that they've got that they are behind what they're saying. But
I know. I've been reading a few comments just based on on different forums and articles that I've read on this decision, and it's really funny because a big complaint the community has against this in general is that the developers aren't doing enough to fix the actual problems and exploits that are leading to these cheats, as opposed to the time that they're spending to market this, we're going to ban you unless you apologize, cheating is an issue kind of mentality, It's almost like they're just taking a very political, easy way out. Like, hey, don't bother fixing it. Let's just, throw a lot of smoke and mirrors and tell people not to cheat.
Whoa, that's a totally different story then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, they need to close those holes a little bit.
Because then the issue then the issue isn't necessarily the player. It's the players to a degree, but if it's something that they know is actively wrong and they're just dragging their feet on fixing it, at that point it's like, hey, you can't really fault the community for just like you said earlier, you're playing the game.
So wait, these people that get banned for cheating, they don't need to download any trainers or external files or something. It's something that they're doing inside the actual game world.
I think there was a couple exploits within the game that was allowing them to do the cheats and stuff.
Well, you don't ban people for that. You don't ban people for exploits. You fix the exploits.
Yeah.
Because the exploits are part of the game. That's not cheating. You can do anything you want that is in the confines of the game. That's not cheating. That's just playing well.
The bugs are the responsibility of the developer.
Exactly. Right. And so that's even how games get more legs, and that's what makes competitive gameplay great, is finding those exploits and then finding a counter to those exploits and then a counter to those exploits. Like, the people who say don't do that move because it's too strong, those people are scrubs.
I mean, and even if it is an issue of them downloading, external trainers, regardless of the fact, the issue is that instead of taking the time to find out what's going on and fix it and stop that from happening, they're just throwing this big PR dance saying, hey, hacking is okay as long as you apologize for it.
Yeah, and if the amount of time it took them to do that, they could have fixed the exploits, then their time budgeting really needs some work.
Yeah.
Although we do know that game exists now, so maybe it doesn't. Maybe they're a little bit smarter than I am.
Yeah, I mean, don't quote me on this because I'm not exactly sure on the details of the cheating. I just know it's been a mix of exploits and different things such as wall hacks and other issues.
All that stuff bring the hammer down, man.
Just zero tolerance on that shit.
I don't know, but fine, like I said, if you're going to cheat and if you're going to ban a cheater, then stick to your guns.
Definitely don't publicly shame people. Come on, man. It's 2015, dude. Can we just, be decent to each other even if people do bad shit? Don't publicly shame people.
And just ban them. End of discussion. And that concludes episode 5 of the Select Characters podcast. Feel free to discuss any of the topics discussed on today's episode in the episode thread over at reddit.com/r/true gaming, or drop us a line on ask.fm/select characters. So, as always, from all of us here at Select Characters, we would like to thank you all for tuning in. If you liked the episode, please consider subscribing to us, and then you'll get every new episode automatically. Links in the description. So once again, thank you for listening and have a great week. Bye!
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Goodbye.